In the final weeks of her life, Amy Winehouse kept repeating something strange to those closest to her, something that made people uncomfortable, something they tried to laugh off, to ignore, to explain away as just another one of her dark jokes. She would look at them with those heavy, coal-lined eyes and say softly, almost like a confession, "I don't think I'm supposed to be here much longer." Nobody wanted to believe her, but looking back now, it feels less like a cry for help and more like a prophecy she had already accepted. But this wasn't the only sign. Amy Jade Winehouse was never ordinary. Not as a child humming jazz standards in her grandmother's kitchen. Not as a teenager scribbling lyrics in the back of classrooms. And certainly not when the world first heard her voice, raw and aching, like something pulled straight from the soul of Billie Holiday herself. She was 20 years old when her debut album dropped. Critics called her a prodigy, a throwback, a girl with an old soul trapped in a young body that didn't yet know how to carry the weight of it all. Then came Back to Black, the album that would make her untouchable. Grammy darling, global sensation. A voice so deep, so broken, so real that it felt like she was singing your pain back to you. But fame arrived like a flood, too fast, too loud, too much. She wasn't ready for the cameras, the scrutiny, the headlines that turned her heartbreak into entertainment. The paparazzi that followed her like vultures, waiting for her to stumble. And stumble she did, again and again. But every time she fell, the world watched, and the world judged, because that's what we do to artists who feel too much. We celebrate their pain when it's wrapped in melody, but when it spills into the streets, messy and raw, we turn away. Amy didn't turn away. She leaned into it, into the chaos, into the music, into the darkness. She couldn't escape. But fame brought shadows she wasn't prepared for. Underneath the beehive hair and the winged eyeliner was a girl who never quite felt safe. Not in her own skin, not in her own mind, not even in her own family. Her parents separated when she was 9, a fracture that never fully healed. Her father became a distant figure, chasing his own dreams, while Amy learned early on what it felt like to be left behind. She adored him, worshipped him even. But love for Amy always came tangled with abandonment. Then there was her grandmother, Cynthia, the one who played her the jazz records, the one who told her it was okay to feel deeply, the one who understood her in ways no one else did. When Cynthia died, something in Amy cracked open, a grief so profound it became the bedrock of her music, but also the weight she would carry for the rest of her life. She learned young that love was temporary, that people leave, that no matter how brightly you shine, the darkness always finds you again. And so she built walls, high ones, but walls made of glass. You could see through them. You could see her hurting, but you couldn't reach her. She coped the way so many artists do, through music, through substances, through relationships that burned hot and fast and left scars. Her emotional world was vast and volatile. Joy and despair lived side by side. She could write a song that made you weep one day and then spiral into silence the next. Therapists would later say she likely struggled with depression, anxiety, self-destructive tendencies. But Amy never wanted labels. She wanted to feel, to create, to love recklessly, even if it destroyed her. This trauma would soon resurface in ways no one expected. Warning signs. In those final weeks, Amy started behaving differently, not in obvious ways, not in ways that made people panic, but in quiet, unsettling shifts that only made sense later. She became obsessed with her legacy, with what people would remember about her. She asked friends strange questions. Do you think they'll forget my music? What do you think people will say when I'm gone? They laughed it off, told her she was being dramatic, that she had decades ahead of her. But she didn't laugh back. She just nodded, smiled faintly, like she knew something they didn't. She started giving things away, small items at first, a necklace here, a jacket there, nothing that seemed significant in the moment. But looking back, it felt ritualistic, like she was unburdening herself, lightening the load. Her speech changed too. She spoke slower, softer, like words were becoming harder to form, like the effort of being present was exhausting. She stopped making plans, stopped talking about the future. When friends suggested trips or projects, she'd say, maybe, but her eyes were somewhere else, somewhere far away. And then there were the photographs. In candid shots taken by friends, by paparazzi, you can see it. The way she stared into the camera, not defiant, not playful, just tired, like she was looking through the lens and seeing the end. One friend later recalled Amy saying, I feel like I've already lived a full life, like I've done what I came here to do. She was 27 years old. Another memory haunts those who knew her. She was sitting in her Camden flat, flipping through old photos of herself, smiling ones, happy ones. She pointed to a picture from her teenage years and whispered, I miss her. I don't know how to get back to her. No one knew what to say, so they said nothing. One moment in particular still haunts those who remember it. There was a night, not the last night, but a night that changed everything. A night where the mask slipped completely. It was late June 2011. Amy was supposed to perform at a small venue. Intimate, low pressure, just her band, and a room full of people who loved her music. But when she stepped onto that stage, something was wrong. She swayed, not from the music, from something deeper, something broken. She forgot lyrics to songs she'd sung 1,000 times. She stared blankly at the audience, confused, like she didn't understand why she was there. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some cheered her on, others whispered, a few left. Amy stood there, bathed in stage light, looking so small, so fragile, like a ghost haunting her own body. Halfway through the set, she stopped singing altogether, just stood there, silent, staring. Then she turned and walked off stage. No explanation, no goodbye. Backstage, she sat on the floor in a corner, knees pulled to her chest, makeup smudged. Her bodyguard found her like that, rocking slightly, humming a melody no one recognized. I can't do this anymore, she whispered. I don't know how to be her anymore. He didn't know what to say, so he just sat with her. That night became the tipping point. The moment the industry, the media, the world realized something had fundamentally shifted. This wasn't just another relapse. This wasn't just bad press. This was someone disappearing in real time. And still, no one intervened. Not in the way that mattered. They cancelled the tour. They released statements. They talked about her taking time to recover. But Amy didn't need time. She needed someone to see her. Really see her. Not as the troubled star, not as the tabloid tragedy, as the girl who just wanted to make music, who wanted to be loved without conditions, who wanted to stop hurting. Instead, she went home to her flat in Camden, to the same four walls that had witnessed so many battles, so many lonely nights. And the silence grew louder. After that night, nothing was ever the same. Isolation is a strange kind of drowning. It doesn't happen all at once. It's gradual, quiet. You don't even realize you're sinking until you can't find the surface anymore. For Amy, those final weeks became a labyrinth of loneliness. She stopped answering calls, stopped seeing friends. Her security team became the only regular human contact. And even they kept their distance, unsure of how to help someone who didn't ask for help. Inside her flat, time moved differently. Days blurred into nights. Curtains stayed drawn. Music played constantly. Old jazz records, Billie Holiday, Dinah Washington, the voices of women who understood heartbreak. Amy would sit for hours, cigarette in hand, staring at nothing. She wrote in her journal, pages and pages, some of it poetry, some of it apologies, some of it just words scattered across the page like broken glass. One entry, later found, simply read, I'm so tired of being me. She wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping. Her body, once vibrant and strong, was beginning to betray her. The years of strain, of substance use, of emotional exhaustion were catching up. But it wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, emotional. She felt hollowed out, like a shell of the person she used to be. Friends who did manage to see her later described the same thing. The light in her eyes was gone. She smiled, but it didn't reach her face. She laughed, but it sounded rehearsed. I'm fine, she'd say, over and over. Like a mantra she was trying to convince herself of, but she wasn't fine. And somewhere deep down, she knew it. She started talking to herself, not in a way that was alarming, just conversational, like she was keeping herself company, like she was trying to fill the void with her own voice. She would pace the flat at night, humming melodies that would never become songs, and she kept returning to one question: what's the point? Not in a dramatic way, not as a threat, just a genuine, quiet wondering, what's the point of all of this? The fame, the music, the pain. No one had an answer, and Amy stopped looking for one. But the most heartbreaking moments were still ahead. The last days were ordinary in the most heartbreaking way. No dramatic scenes, no final confessions, just a woman existing in the spaces between moments. She watched TV, she listened to music, she smoked, she paced. Her bodyguard checked on her regularly. She told him she was okay, that she just needed rest. On the final day, a Saturday in late July, she was alone. The sun was out. Camden was alive with weekend energy, but inside, Amy was still. She had been sober for a few weeks. A small victory, a fragile one. But sobriety, for Amy, was complicated. It meant feeling everything without a buffer. And sometimes, feeling everything is unbearable. She spent the afternoon listening to records. There was no grand farewell, no final song. Just Amy, in her flat, surrounded by the ghosts of who she used to be. In those quiet hours, she seemed different. Calmer, perhaps. Or maybe just resigned. Like someone who had finally made peace with something they'd been fighting for too long, she moved through her space slowly, touching familiar objects. A photo frame, a guitar she hadn't played in weeks, the fabric of a dress hanging in her closet, small gestures that felt like quiet goodbyes to a life that had become too heavy to carry. Later that evening, as the sun began to set and Camden's streets filled with the sounds of Saturday night laughter and music, Amy retreated to her bedroom, the same room where she'd written songs, where she'd cried, where she'd dreamed of becoming the artist she always wanted to be. And in that space, exhausted from years of fighting battles no one fully understood, she let go. And in those final moments, something quietly shifted. Amy Winehouse died at 27, the same age as Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, Jim Morrison. They call it the 2-7 Club. A tragic, poetic coincidence. But there's nothing romantic about it. These were people who felt too much, who gave too much, who burned too bright in a world that wasn't built to protect them. Amy saw it coming, not because she wanted it, but because she understood herself. She understood her limits, and she knew that the machine of fame, of expectation, of relentless scrutiny was grinding her down. And still, no one stopped it. We talk a lot about mental health now, about empathy, about recognizing warning signs. But when Amy was alive, we didn't talk. We watched. We judged. We consumed her pain as entertainment. The lesson isn't just about addiction or depression or fame. It's about how we treat people who are struggling, how we turn away when the suffering becomes inconvenient, how we wait until it's too late to say, I should have done more. Amy's music endures because it's honest, painfully, beautifully honest. She didn't sing about escaping pain. She sang about surviving it, about living inside it. And maybe that's the real tragedy, that she gave us her truth, her vulnerability, her soul. And in return, we gave her loneliness. If Amy were here now, what would we say to her? Maybe we'd say, we're sorry. We should have listened. We should have protected you. We should have seen you as more than your mistakes. But she's not here. So instead, we say it to each other, to the people still struggling, still hurting, still trying to find their way in the dark. You are not your pain. You are not your mistakes. You are not your worst day. You are worthy of help. of love, of a second chance. And if someone you know is repeating the same quiet warnings Amy did, don't wait, don't look away. Because some goodbyes don't get rehearsals. Some voices only get one song, and when they're gone, all we're left with is the echo.